It's good to see everybody here today for our next to last meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Appropriations and Revenue. I ask at this time that all members take their seat. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Here.
Senator Deneen.
Here.
Senator Douglas.
Present.
Senator Funky Fromeyer. Senator Givens. Senator Mays Bledsoe.
Present.
Senator Neal. Senator Nemus.
Present.
Senator Webb. Representative Banta. Representative Bentley. Representative Bowling.
Here.
Representative Bray.
Present.
Representative Brown. Representative Dietz.
Here.
Representative Dossett.
Present.
Representative Flannery. Representative Fleming.
Here.
Representative Fraser Gordon. Representative Freeland. Representative Fugit.
Here.
Representative Gentry.
Here.
Representative Hart.
Here.
Representative Johnson. Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative McPherson.
Here.
Representative Palumbo.
Here.
Representative Raymond. Representative Riley. Representative Stevenson. Representative Upchurch. Co-Chair Petrie.
Here.
Chair McDaniel.
Here. Very well. Having a quorum or duly constituted to conduct business at this time, I'll entertain a motion on the minutes from the October meeting of the Appropriations and Revenue Committee.
So moved.
By Senator Boswell, second by Dr. Douglas. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like ayes have it. Minutes are adopted. Some of you will note that we did have an agenda item related to a job skills program appropriation and property purchase on the agenda previously. That has been removed due to one of the people due to testify having a death in the family. However, we will be sending some follow-up questions to everyone affiliated with that. And if anyone on this committee has something they would like to add to those questions, please let the chair know in the next day or two so we can do that. At this point, we're going to talk about the grant program. Secretary Knoll, if you'd like to come up, sir, and proceed. There you go. Well, if you guys would all sit down, identify yourselves for the record, and proceed.
My name is Jeff Nolan. I'm the Secretary of the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development.
My name is Matt Wingate. I'm the General Counsel for the Cabinet.
I'm Katie Smith. I'm the Deputy Secretary of the Cabinet.
Mr. Chairman, just for expediency, because I know you've got a full agenda, we did provide a deck that's got a lot of background information. Let's just go right through the slides very quickly, and that's for your all's information, just to have a complete deck. Let's go right to slide number 9, and we can get right into, I think, the things.
I'm liking this presentation already.
You've taught me well. I'm trying to learn how to expedite things. But the information's there just in case anyone needs it, and we're happy to come back and answer any questions relative to the terms and conditions and whatnot. I think the most important thing is, it's been an amazing program. We set out really some key objectives early when it came into our cabinet, which was not only to try to get the funds committed as quickly as we could, but to build a process in which through the efforts, not only would we get, I think, long-standing capacity built to figure out how to go after federal grants in a different way, link all the various initiatives together to create the big picture, because you get more funding from the federal government that way, but also to really keep a track on how much are we leveraging it and where are we finding new sources of funding compared to the kinds of programs we've seen communities go after in the past. And also, as I said, one of the other objectives was to be really, I think, very good in communications, and I'm proud of the team. It's been an amazing process. We get applications in by the 1st of the month. That's the date, that's the cutoff for the group to be considered. We have a great team effort in which we go through all the grants, and by the 21st of the month of all those that we received on the 1st, they have received an email from us whether they have been approved or not. Leading up to that, over that basically 3-week period, our team's physically and personally having conversations with every group that's made an application, and if there is any issues with it, they get told that month so that then they can come back and correct it the following month. And I think you're going to see the process has worked, I think, extremely well. One, and this is another part of the process that we set out, and that is how do we make sure that the tools we have across the state are being fully utilized? And so we began from the very beginning working with the area development districts, with Casey and his groups, and I think we've had multiple calls, multiple meetings, and they've done amazing work. And we always go out and say, go with your local area development district. Then we work together on a particular grant initiative. And I had one just last week where we contacted the local the community that was asking for something. We just did a conference call together. Amazingly, we got everybody together and got the process actually moving forward. Let's go to the next slide. The other is, and thanks to the way this legislation was put together, support for Grant Ready Kentucky, and we have worked with them. If you take both Grant Ready Kentucky and the area development districts and the meetings that we have had, it gives you a list of all the webinars and the face-to-face meetings that our cabinet has had. This does not include a lot of group discussions and going to meetings that really weren't part of a plan, but we talked about this program, including in all of our turf meetings locally with area development organizations. And then today our folks are there in Corbin doing a seminar and doing work because, again, objective is how do you build capacity? And we're finding that the local communities are really greatly appreciative. And what I like about it is the ad districts in Grant Ready, Kentucky, and with a little bit of support from us, there seems to be a joint learning effort, and we're learning from each other going forward. This gives you a sense of where we are through the first several months of the program, and the 115 projects have been approved. I think that's remarkable when you think about the steps and the efforts to make sure that you do the reviews that need to be done. And here's the one that I'm really excited about. If you just take a snapshot of what's here, those little numbers in each one of the counties is the number of projects that have been approved. And I love seeing a concentration in eastern Kentucky with multiple grant applications. I love seeing it in western Kentucky. I think we've got a good dispersion across central Kentucky. There are a few communities like Perry County and even Johnson County that have had multiple grants come through to get approved. And you know what? That shows how important this program was and the kinds of need that was out there for communities that heretofore didn't have the local match to go after those funds. Let's go to the next slide. In terms of numbers, we have committed $66 million with total project of about $332 million. If we keep on this run, we could see over $1 billion of projects leveraged with the $200 million program. I actually hope we can get it even beyond that. That's one of the things we talk with local communities. But I can tell you in the first couple of months, we saw traditional applications for CDBG, AML funds, which are great programs. Don't misunderstand me. You all gave us the latitude with quite a few agencies. We pushed that. We encouraged that. And quite candidly, it fit nicely with our blueprint where we talked about economic developers should be focused on infrastructure, placemaking, and workforce. And what we have seen is everything from habitat worker housing projects being done, splash pads being put in place for community recreation, walk and biking trails, what I call the traditional water and sewer funding that needs to be in place. But what was really cool was a lot of the water and sewer funding applications were taking into consideration what they were trying to do in terms of the community placemaking and even making references to the KPDI program in terms of how it fit the bigger picture of what was looking to be done within the community. And again, everything from senior citizen centers, you name it, we have seen it, and even training centers to be adjacent to or part of KPDI previous approval so the capacity for workforce training could be there. So not to delve into it any longer, I think it has been an amazing program, and the diversity of the types of applications, the projects themselves, and what we know to be in the pipeline. I think we got about 30 applications already this month. It's amazing to see the communities really thinking more expansively and looking at how you connect the dots for programs and initiatives that are their priority to make sure that's reflected in that federal grant application that they're submitting to us. So the next slide, please. Always nice to know how much money we still have available. So before this committee especially, we put numbers in front of you all to make sure you know that we are tracking it. And we still have $133 million available for funding. We have kind of an internal goal that we hope to kind of be finished with the program in the sense of everything approved early into next year. I think we can get there. And we're going to continue to work on it. You also see one number, and that is a community self-reported to us after an approval that they were notified a federal grant had not been approved. So we take that back in roll it back into the process. And by the way, one of the things that's part of our grant approvals is the responsibility of the community to keep us informed in the event a grant is not approved, so we can reprogram it, but also go back to work with them on it. And the last thing I'm going to share before I'm done, Mr. Chairman, is we have had some communities who were told they didn't have a complete application or that it didn't meet the scoring criteria that's part of the process. We talk to those folks in the month at which it occurs, and the vast majority of those communities have resubmitted the following or the following month and have now been approved. And again, I go back to one of the objectives is to learn, build capacity, and to help really create a team effort relative to the ad districts, the communities, Grant Ready, Kentucky, and our cabinet. So there is I know a very abbreviated presentation, but I know you got a long schedule. But we are open to any questions or any comments, obviously, that you all would have. And I just want to close again by thanking you all and entrusting us with this program. I actually think it fits very nicely with our blueprint and our strategy as a cabinet. And in many ways, it's also, I think, helped our team as we go out into the communities, as we commit to doing as a team several times a year. When you have these grants and you know which grants are coming, it actually allows you to have a whole set of conversations when that intersection between community and economic development and discussions about KPDI or other things are taking place. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't say that we're seeing in there some tourism-related projects, and that's also allowed us to have a whole new set of conversations. In fact, we had a special workshop with SOAR in Pikeville just last month, and part of the topic, and we had a breakout conversation, is how do we use grant and tourism to drive job growth and opportunity in differing parts of the state. So again, thank you all for entrusting us, and thank you for allowing us to present here today.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We do appreciate it. At this time, I think Representative Petrie has some questions.
Thank you very much. Actually, just comment, I believe, or comments. One, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, for updating us. Thank you for building a program from scratch from statute. The implementation is difficult, and I understand that. Also, thank you for the reflexive feedback about how to stand this up. That is extraordinarily helpful. This is a massive program when you really get down to it, not just the dollar figures, but its impact. And if you're thinking about $200 million going out to assist local applicants, that might potentially result in $1 billion worth of investment in Kentucky, that is a pretty good ROI, I think. So, one, I applaud your efforts. I think it doesn't mean everything's perfect, never is, but really, really good, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very well. Anybody else? Any questions or comments? No?
If
All
I
right.
may add, Mr.
Nice work,
Chairman,
sir.
because
Yeah.
I think it's important to add, I'm looking at some faces that I seemingly have had some time with all of you all. The input you all have provided and the chance that we get to have good conversations with members of this body relative to what's going on in your respective areas and what's important and the sometimes the history behind it. I just come back to it really is a team effort. I really do believe that you all and everybody working together and the input we received, and I think our ability to process it and come back, still not perfect, but I really do believe it's an iterative process, and that's how you build stronger programs. And yes, I do believe the impact on this will be felt not just by the dollars, but by the whole change management, change thought process in terms of how do we go out and look at federal grants coupled with state funding. So thank you all.
Very well. Thank you. All right. Next up, we will have here's some updates on the judicial branch budget from Chief Justice Van Meter and Carol Henderson. If you guys would please come on up and identify yourselves for the record.
Lawrence Van Meter, Chief Justice of the Commonwealth.
Carol Henderson, AFC Budget Director.
Jenny Lafferty, AFC Director of Finance Administration.
Jenny, I don't think your microphone is on.
We can fix that.
Very well.
There we go.
Please proceed.
Okay, so as I understand, we're here because in the springtime we received a very nice budget. We got almost everything we asked for, and that was April. We were congratulating ourselves, and a couple months ago I instituted austerity measures. So what's this about? So we actually got that same question within our branch, and we've talked to colleagues, talked to the leadership of both the clerks and the judges. And so I've brought Jenny and Carol here to explain through a PowerPoint as to what happened. So, Carol?
I'll briefly go over what was in our budget bill, which was House Bill 264. It was expansion of mental health court sites, some additional positions, and the increment, all the salary increments. And then in our local facilities fund appropriation, there was the additional use allowance that we requested for already authorized construction projects. And the biggest part was a capital project asset preservation fund. So I wanted to give you an update on the asset preservation. $53.5 million was appropriated. Since July 1st, $2.8 million have been obligated. That's 128 asset preservation projects throughout 66 counties. Currently, contracts are circulating that obligates an additional $8.3 million of that, and our facility staff is working diligently with the counties to get these asset preservation like HVAC systems, roofs, electrical upgrades in the systems, and some renovations. Things that were in our budget request this past session but were not appropriated was additional judgeships. In the 2022 session, the General Assembly authorized 9 judgeships. The original discussion was then starting in January of 2027, 9 district judgeships would go away. But the statute got changed to where it's January of 2031, and we just can't absorb these costs any longer. So we did ask for those funds, and it was not appropriated. On the defined calculations of health insurance and workers' comp, the employer cost of our health insurance has gone up $3.8 million over the base, and workers' comp has gone up $1 million over the baseline appropriation. So those 3 things total $9.5 million. The court operations that operated in I'm talking about court operations appropriation unit, has been in a deficit since 2010. Some of the reasons for that, when we had to pull out vacancies in budget requests and past budget requests, and they weren't funded as additional funding items, we did not abolish those positions because it's a moving snapshot in time. We have attempted to address pay compression issues in our branch, and then the cost of goods and services have just increased dramatically. So what we've done since 2010, in 2010, we had significant layoffs. And since then, we have had furloughs, hiring freezes, travel restrictions, and we have used vacancy credits. So, if a position is vacant for 2 months, we're not paying salary and benefits, so that has savings. And then our agency revenue restricted fund carry forward has helped balance the budget. So the vacancy credits are dwindling. We just are not. We're filling the positions quickly, and oftentimes the person has more. We can grade resumes, and the people come in making more than maybe the person that left. Then those 3 items I just talked about, and so if we had not implemented any cost savings measures, our restricted fund carry forward, we don't have a rainy day fund, so our restricted fund carry forward kind of acts as a savings account, basically. So if we had not implemented any cost savings measure, those funds would have been depleted within 2 years, and then we would have been having some really stringent measures if the General Assembly didn't fund it in our next budget session, the 26-28 session. So what are the deficits? In court operations, the budget office, we were projecting that based on fiscal year 24 expenditures, there's going to be $337.5 million. The appropriation is $317.4, so that's a deficit, as you can say, of 20.1. The facilities fund, the local facilities fund, we pay for the debt service on judicial for courthouses, judicial centers, and then we pay counties all the operating costs because the counties own those buildings for the most part, and we pay the county's utilities, the janitorial, the regular maintenance, like changing filters, mowing, things like that, and insurance. The cost increased by 9% going from 22 to 23, and fiscal year 25 estimates are based on the last audit completed. So the last audit completed was a fiscal year 23 audit. So that's a $4.5 million deficit over the appropriation. So the total of these two things is $24.6 million. The cost savings measures that the chief talked about, effective November 1st, we placed a 60-day hold on any vacant position. So any position of the 3,500 non-elected positions that become vacant November 1st, it has to stay vacant for 60 days. Out-of-state travel, we've limited out-of-state travel on general fund dollars to the Supreme Court justices and the AOC director. In-state travel, we have asked AOC departments to limit in-state travel or see if it can be done through Teams or Zoom. And then our operating budget, we're 90% personnel in our court operations appropriation unit. And so that leaves only like 10% for operating costs, so office supplies, those type of operating costs. So we reverted what we had projected for 25 operating costs back to 24 budget levels, not the expenditure levels, but the budget levels. So the anticipated budget request for the next budget session, the 26th, is to ask for funding for the judicial branch, address pay compression issues that we have, and then obviously the increased costs of goods and services that are caused by inflation. So local facilities fund, we are going to make a request for those operating costs because they're going up. And the 24 audits are being done by AOC Audit Department, and the ones that are coming back, because we have to settle up with the counties for actual costs of what they've paid on operating. And so it looks like it's going up even more.
So anyway, the cost-saving measures that I authorized, which is the prior slide or maybe the prior before that, will result in savings of about $10 million, which will make the deficit manageable for this biennium. And then in the future, in the next biennium, I anticipate we'll ask, as Carol said, for an increased appropriation to deal with those things. So we can manage right now, and we're not going to ask for a supplemental appropriation in 25 unless y'all want to give it. Okay. So anyway, that's where we are. So.
Very well. Chief Justice, it was our understanding when we passed the budget that the cost of the new judges was absorbable throughout the course of the biennium, and this was not going to be an issue. Could you explain why the change in position on that?
It is absorbable. It's only we're trying to explain why we're going to have a deficit of $24 million. That's just part of it.
I think if I could just add to looking at each individual piece of the additional requests that were in the budget request, any one of them, if it was not appropriated by itself, would have been very easily absorbable. It's that it totaled up to that $9.5 million, which in addition to our long-standing deficit made it necessary to slow things down just a little bit for us to be able to absorb all those costs.
So we passed your budget on March the 28th, and then the governor signed it on April the 9th, and we would have had time to potentially address things when we returned. Why were none of these issues raised at that time?
Well, we didn't look when the budget office basically does a rebudget to like, this is what we spent in 24, this is what we're forecasting for 25. So we didn't do that until July.
But the General Assembly doesn't meet in July.
Right, I know, but I understand your point. We just, we had to wait for the fiscal year to end to see where the expenditures actually fell,
Okay. Well, I'd encourage you to keep trying to find ways inside of the budget to do this and in ways that aren't impactful to the implementation of justice to the citizens. That's the important thing, right? And then
Exactly.
we can try to work through these deficits down the line, but certainly not in a odd-numbered year. I don't see that as being a thing that we'll explore. I'm sorry. Senator Boswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that you had a $1 million increase in your workman's comp. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? That sounds like a fairly, you have had injuries or what?
Yeah,
what's the problem?
my understanding is we had 2 wrecks in, employees were hurt in 2 different wrecks. And so those workers' comp costs increase our premium. Our premium was $650,000. That was what it is in our base. It's gone up to $1.65 million.
Wow. Is that part of the state fund?
We are self-insured for workers' comp, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was because at the beginning of every budget request, we get what our rate is.
Right.
And it's posted on, I think, the governor's budget office website during the budget request. And so that was what our bill is basically for the judicial branch.
And probably not a part of this, but I think it's common knowledge that we had a judge was shot and killed in the courthouse down in Letcher County, which that entitled his family to workers' comp.
Yeah, so we anticipate the next biennium that it will increase even more.
We'll leave that one be as to how the insurance subrogation will work
Right.
on that issue. Co-Chair Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carry forward your savings account in effect. What's the balance on it? What's the expected carry forward?
The restricted fund carry forward going into fiscal year 25 was $51 million.
And what would you expect it to be at the end of 25 going into 26?
It should be maybe a little bit less because whatever revenue we've been taking in, we've actually been spending. And so if these cost savings measures don't make up the $20 million, then we're going to have to use some of that. So right now, I think it's too early to tell.
So what else would the carry forward money be used more appropriately than a shortfall in a budget?
One-time monies like upgrading of the audio video systems, because the General Assembly appropriated money for that, and it was like part of the $14.7 million that was appropriated, like 10.6 of it was that, but it doesn't cover all the courtrooms, and so we still have probably about, I think, 160 plus courtrooms that need to be upgraded, their video system. So it's like one-time, we use it just for one-time costs.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, may I?
Please do.
So you're still going to have a sizable tens of millions in carry forward, even using it for shortfall if you had to?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate the cost-saving measures being put in place. Putting that in place, I'm not sure that there is a savings account or a reserve account or an investment account or a one-time investment account in the judicial budget. I'm not familiar with that. And I understand a carry forward could be used in effect that way, but that causes some concern in and of itself. I know there are several smallish issues and some larger than what you've presented. I highly suggest and request talk with us well in advance to work through those things, because I've got a feeling that the carry forward balance is going to have to be looked at carefully so that we are budgeting tightly without what some people would call slush. We want to make sure that that's there. If there are capital improvements needed, equipment improvements needed, other things needed, then I think those can be appropriated with due consideration by the House and the Senate. Otherwise, I'm not certain what that carry forward of that large of amount is relative to. Secondly, or thirdly, cost-saving measures, looking at that, talking with us. If you have any expansions of programs or intended expansions that may or may not have been discussed specifically in this last budget round, may want to look at culling those back or limiting those with a delayed implementation until the budget items are smoothed out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair Petrie. Representative Fraser Gordon.
Thank you for being here today. And I just have a question in regards to the video conferencing that you've mentioned, some of the equipment. A few years back, we had kind of encouraged more of that as a cost savings message or cost savings measure, both for the transport costs. And at that time, we were told that there was an unwillingness for adoption among some of the judicial staff. So I was just wondering if you're seeing more of an adoption rate by justices using this system.
That was for the video arraignment. For
And that
details.
is true. That is happening. The one issue that we're having, and I think Representative Elliott had a meeting here, or not sure where, but within the last couple of weeks, one of the issues is, say, if I'm a judge in Scott County and I have a prisoner in Fayette County, there's not as good a cooperation with that. If it's in county, there's very good cooperation. It's just some of those wrinkles need to be ironed out.
And if I could also just maybe supplement that just a little, it is a cost-saving measure for transportation purposes, but transportation costs, that's not part of the judicial branch budget. So it doesn't actually result in a cost savings for our budget. It's a result in a cost savings for local governments.
And what I was talking about on the audio video, they're the systems that, or the court record basically of, it records what goes on in court, and so it's not the video arraignment system.
And we view, I think, as the AOC, our responsibility to make the equipment available in every court facility so that it can be implemented. And I know that the Chief's office has been working with judges across the state about implementing it.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be a cost savings for the taxpayer in general, wherever budget it comes out of, but thank you for that.
Thank you. And if I could just piggyback on that briefly, certainly, we appropriated money to, and I know this is not part of your presentation, but since we're headed down this path briefly, we did appropriate that money to the justice in one biennial budget and then to the jails in the second biennial budget in order for that to occur. And I would hope that inter-county, they would recognize the level of cooperation that the members of the General Assembly regionally had to go through in order to make this a reality, and the fact that it does generate savings, probably more for the sheriffs than anybody, but and it also expedites some of the things. I would hope that to the extent possible, your office would continue to encourage that cooperation between all agencies involved.
We are.
And if we don't happen to see you in front of this committee again, Mr. Chief Justice, thank you for your service. We are truly indebted
Well, thank
to you.
you. I'll be back tomorrow. State of the Judiciary. So, thank you all.
Very well. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you all for your time. All right, the final item that we have today is an update on the electric vehicle charging program. Members of the Transportation Cabinet wouldn't care to come forward, please.
John Moore, Deputy State Highway Engineer.
Good to see you, John.
Good to see you.
Please proceed.
Actually, I thought Kenny Bishop had reached out to you. But,
he did.
Okay.
We do happen to have a slide deck here, so I was a little bit confused.
I believe that is finances.
That's finances. Got it. Okay. Well, go ahead with your portion.
Well, I don't have a portion. So the bulk of it is I would just be reiterating what finance has been offered. Our deputy budget director was unavailable to make it today.
And forgive me, I forgot that this was kind of a dual presentation. Richard, you want to come up as well? I apologize. I forgot we were tag teaming this issue, so forgive me.
Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard Dobson with the Department of Revenue, Executive Director of the Office of Sales and Excise Taxes.
Bethany Atkins Rice with the Office of Legal Services for Revenue.
Please proceed.
All right, thank you. And on our portion, we're talking about the electric vehicle excise power tax. Just to give you a little bit of an update, the first couple of slides are just a summary review of what was enacted initially. Of course, the legislation went into effect at the beginning of this year. And the rates are listed there, 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And moving on quickly here, just a few implementation details. The tax is due monthly on the 25th. It is an electronic form that has to be filed. There was an electronic registration process, and we do track the number of charging stations and the amount of power that's distributed by each on the return. And the tax has to be displayed if there is a selling price on the charging stations. Currently where we are, we have 25 registered accounts. These will be different entities that are, remitting the tax separately. The 51 charging stations, locations across the Commonwealth, and that is comprised of 164 chargers. We do continue to make contact with. We're tracking this on the Department of Energy's website. They have, they track where a new charging station gets installed, and of course that's part of the transportation cabinet as well. So as we get that information, then we're following up with additional letters. So that's an ongoing process right now. Originally, the initial legislation included the smaller level 2 chargers, and I'm sure that you're very familiar with those issues that were caused there. And so in the 2024 session, House Bill 122 retroactively with a different the charging station capacity eliminated the level 2 chargers. And the big problem there, of course, they were not metered. There was the inability to maintain or to track the amount of electricity being distributed. And as far as collections are concerned, the first return, of course, in January of this year, due on February the 25th. And so for the past fiscal year 2024, the total amount of receipts, $168,000. And then for this year, since July, $169,000 for a cumulative amount of just over $338,000. There was a provision in the legislation for an adjustment to the rate on an annual basis, and that's based upon the National Highway Construction Index. And so we're monitoring that. There's the base rate of 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and based upon the index, that rate can go up or down each year, but the maximum amount of increase or decrease is 5%. And so in monitoring that right now, we do project that will go up by 5% effective January 2025. And that's really the extent of our presentation and contact information as well. And we'd entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you, Director Dobson. So what kind of growth are we anticipating relative to the potential rollout of future electric vehicles? Are there any kind of projections whatsoever right now?
Not that we're aware of at this point. We're more heads down implementing, and we haven't really seen, and that is and the Transportation Cabinet might have some comments in that regard. But at this point, we've got about 28 letters out on additional contacts with charging station locations, and we think there are another 28 letters, so there'll be 28 locations and another 70 or so charging stations to account for right now. So that's what we are as far as a compliance standpoint.
I don't have a projection on electric vehicle growth. We're, for the purposes of the NEVI program, we provide a range estimating that, but I can check with our motor vehicle department and get an estimate to you.
If we could, and I don't know that it's particularly urgent, but if in the next 3 to 4 weeks we could just kind of begin to start working on some forecasting for what that will look like, and then also if there is any potential. I know you get into a little bit of dynamic scoring here, and I don't know how you guys feel about that, but how that might potentially impact, the gas tax revenues. It would be nice to begin to see those things and kind of what the future could hold for us.
We'll get some information back to you.
Thank you guys very much. Other questions from the committee at this time? Senator Boswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if this is within your area or not, but so, with gas sales and retail sales especially, the price can vary because the various retailers may want to make more profit and less. With these electric power stations, we know what the state's getting per kilowatt hour, whatever it is, but is there anyone regulating the cost that the retailer passes on to the consumer? How is that being handled? Does it vary just like gas, or do you find that the profit margins that retailers are allowed to receive is all the same? Is somebody regulating that?
Really do not have any knowledge of that other than just assuming what the market bears.
I don't have information on that either.
Senator Funky Fromeyer.
Kind of adding on to what Senator Boswell was expressing, some additional questions that have been brought more recently, the innovation in transportation. We're seeing it in some of our urban areas where there's more golf carts and mopeds and many other electrified vehicles or multimodal transportation, and how they access charging, moving from here to there. And then there has been some retail consideration that a retail gas station is charged more for electricity that is flowing from their retail gas station than if they were charging up right here outside of our building in Frankfurt. So one that might be government owned or government operated. So I am interested, where do we go to get some answers around that? I thought it would be our transportation cabinet. I haven't addressed it yet, so recognizing you may be surprised by that question. But there has been quite a bit of question around that in northern Kentucky. We're getting a number of vehicles that cross over our rivers, across our bridges, and may not have places to charge. So I'm wondering what we're doing in Kentucky around that innovation.
I apologize around the innovation regarding
electrified everything.
So we are working in transportation to implement the federal NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, to at least provide the trunk system throughout the state. Beyond that, the government is not playing a role to deploy additional electric vehicle stations. Now, once we have the NEVI backbone or the framework in place, then the limitations on the NEVI funding would allow for us to participate in some community charging or destination charging, but we're a number of years away from being able to unlock the flexibility with those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Senator from Marjorie, another question, or are you good to go there? All right. Any others? Okay, seeing none, obviously, guys, this is something that will continue to evolve and, take many different permutations over the next several decades, probably. So thank you for your ongoing work with it. We do appreciate it, and look forward to talking more about it.
Thank you, Chair McDaniel.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, just one last comment on the item that was scrapped. I would certainly like to encourage that as we send the questions out to those that receive them, that they be returned quickly, and probably be wise to delay any action on that particular item until this committee has had a deeper chance to consider the overall ramifications. To the members of the committee, you do have a number of reports that were received over the course of the past month in your packet, so I would encourage you to take a look at those. At this time, the only other item is the announcement that we do have a December 3rd meeting for this committee. So I'd encourage everyone to please put that on your calendar and plan on being here on December the 3rd. Seeing nothing else to come in front of the committee, we'll stand adjourned.